All right, it's NHL Draft Week. It's also unrestricted free agency right around the corner. My next guest is the managing director of Octagon Hockey, former NHL player, and full disclosure, a teammate of mine once upon a time. You know, Mike Liut, when we played together in Washington, I never thought about you being a guy that would negotiate almost $500 million in contracts down the road. But is it true that's right around the number?
Yeah. Well, I don't know, company wide, I guess.
Wow.
It's not a number that we keep, but a lot of contracts and a lot of years to get to that number too, Nick. Been slugging away for a couple of decades now.
No question about that. And we look at your work post career. Before we start getting into what we saw during the draft this week, and then leading into unrestricted free agency, just your overall thoughts. I know you've got the law degree, Mike. Was it a natural fit just to go into the agency business?
Not particularly. I mean, the agency business started with lawyers. My interest was going to law school generally. I passed the bar exam, of course, and then I was involved heavily with the Players Association. There was some interest in moving the labor department to Detroit. That's why I wound up here. For a lot of reasons, that didn't happen. And, I'd been here in Detroit about 5 or 6 years. And, it was just, do I move back to Toronto? Grew up in Toronto or just outside of Toronto in Woodbridge. Or do we just stay here? And I looked to do something else. And obviously we stayed here. And Brian Lawton was another one of a teammate, and he had started a small agency, and he was merging it or selling it into Octagon, which was going to be their first foray into hockey. And he asked me to do it with him. And that's how I wound up at Octagon. He left to be the GM in Tampa, and I guess he left me holding the bag. But it's been a really I've enjoyed it. Octagon, great company, very strong, diverse, multinational. In all the sports, events, event ownership, tennis tournaments. So I've been able to do a few things outside of hockey, which has piqued my interest. And of course, we've within our group, Alan Walsh and Ben Hankinson, Andy Scott, Rob Hooper, Rick Follett, Chris McAlpine. So we've got a nice collection of lawyers and former hockey players, and some former hockey players who are lawyers. But good group, and we've been very fortunate that we've represented, had the opportunity to represent some high-profile players, and that's certainly fun. Made a lot of good friends in it, and happy we did it.
Certainly know from Brian Lawton's perspective, and he's a regular here on the Real Kyper at Noon show, that he left you with a pretty big, heavy bag, which includes the likes of Matt Murray, who just got traded to Ottawa, Patrick Laine, of course, one of your clients, and someone we're watching closely. And we'll talk a little bit about that a little later. But right now, I just want to get your thoughts on, typically between Mike, the draft and unrestricted free agency, there is a little bit of a breathing period, but not in a pandemic. So what was your week like so far, getting through the draft and now looking at Friday's unrestricted free agency?
The draft takes care of itself. We really don't have much to do with that at all, and even less this year because we're not present. The focus this week has been, getting ready for free agency. And you're right. Usually, Monday following the draft, there's 5 days or so before you get to free agency, and then another 5 before you have to file for salary arbitration. And now it's going to be 2 and not even 1, to get to free agency, and then filing for salary arbs the next day. So all that's going to happen by Saturday of this week. So, for for a business that was relatively sleepy since March, as we're all just watching the bubble, now in the last 10 days, it's gotten, hectic, more to what it's like post NHL entry draft in other years. And, we're all doing this against the backdrop of we don't even know if we're going to have a season. We think we're going to have a season. We hope we have a season. But, with the ruling from the Ontario sports minister today about the OHL and not being allowed to, I don't know if you can play. It's not hockey if there's no body contact. It's shinny at that point. So
I want to get into that a little later, but just in terms of the draft and what your overall thoughts were, there's no question when you're just dealing with the first round, a lot of these names, because of social media and the coverage now more than ever, a few of these names, especially when you're talking about top 10 rated players in the world, they become household names. So there is some intrigue, but watching that second day, Ludi, and I'm watching it, I'd rather slam the trunk car on my bottom lip than have to put in 6.5 hours ever again watching that. But
the thing about the draft is yes, every year there's a handful of players who have a chance to step into the NHL, and everybody else, it's a couple, 3, 4 years before they're going to hopefully receive that opportunity. And the reality is, if there's 17, 20, whatever gets drafted in a year, the guys in the NHL, they don't roll over every 4 years, right? There's players, you mentioned Matt Murray. Matt Murray will be playing hockey in 10 years in the NHL, 26 years old. And in 10 years, they're going to draft over 2,000 players. Right?
Not many jobs.
Not that many jobs, right? So this is the pinnacle. And so for the draft, you're advising a young player, maintaining that perspective is important, right? And for the top players, and we've had our fair share. There's an expectation. Okay, you're a top guy. Now the expectation is not only are you going to play, but you're going to be a significant player. The bar is raised for those players. So there's perspective, needs to be different, and it's at that point it's a higher level that they're going to be expected to play to. And against all of that, in a bad draft, a draft that doesn't turn out, I shouldn't say a bad draft, a draft where the player talent doesn't turn out for one reason or another, you may have 9 kids drafted in the top 30, now 31, that do not play in the NHL, do not have a career, play a game, play 50 games, maybe play 100 games, but that's not a career. So again, perspective. And of course, there's players that are going to go later in the rounds, and their perspective is, hey, you got a lot of ground to make up, but there's lots of examples. And so what matters is not the draft, right? And to put it into football terms, you're on the goal line, but the end zone is 100 yards away, right? Or more if you're in Canada. So it's, that's the thing. It's the starting line. It's not the finish line. And there's a lot of things that are going to happen, a lot of adversity, and they need to really focus on, tomorrow. What are you going to do tomorrow to be a better player the next day? And let time just work its magic.
We know, thanks to COVID, there was no live draft. There was no parents in the stands. There was no kids waiting. And I know from your perspective, it saved you probably a ton of money on meals and hotels, which you were very happy about, knowing the way I know you. But all kidding aside, as an agent, where is that fine line and your responsibility to make it abundantly clear to kids and parents that where the odds are, without raining on their parade or taking away their hope and their dreams? Because sometimes you watch kids in the past sit in the stands hour upon hour and they don't hear their name picked out. How difficult is that for an agent?
That if you put yourself in that position, I don't want to say you deserve it. I guess every agent has made that mistake, right? But generally speaking, you need to know that client is going to be top 3 rounds, top 2. And after that, it's not worth going. It just isn't worth going. It just doesn't, you're going to meet all these people at the first rookie camp. So in terms of managing, and that's what we do, we're managing, or should be doing, managing their careers, both on and off the ice, and help educating them. A role at this stage is more family advisor, in the sense that you're explaining to them what's in front of them, right? What to expect, because they don't know, and everybody comes into it and they think, well, I was a top player in Pee Wee and Bantam and junior and the NHL. Well, it doesn't work that way, because you're going from the province of Ontario, or where I am, the state of Michigan, to the world stage. All the best players from all those areas are trying to play in the NHL, and you're not dashing any hopes. You're just you need to educate them as to what they need to do to be successful. When we were playing, Nick, it was how to be a pro. Once you got there, what's it going to take to be a pro? How do you live your life? And right now, it's these kids need to understand that there's just a lot of things that can go wrong, and you cannot take anything for granted. And you work hard, and then you get into what we all knew as players, right? What's your one thing that will allow you to play on that NHL team? What do you do? And for a lot of these kids, they have to understand that they may have been a top 6 forward in junior or in college. They're not going to be in the NHL, right? There's only so many. 6 times 31. It's not hard to figure out, right? If you're a center, 2 times 31, 62 top 2 centermen on a team, guys that'll play on the power play. Everybody else has to find another role. Just that simple. 31 starting goalies, 31 backup goalies. The math isn't that hard. But my dad, his line was this, there's always room for another good one. The question is, are you going to be a good one? Are you going to be good enough? And you're not going to get that answer today or tomorrow or through the draft. You're going to get it over time. And,
so when you look at the year 2020 and you look at this generation coming up, I want your honest assessment. What are their strengths? Even if you want to go back to our generation, what's today's generation? What are their strengths and what are their weaknesses?
The strengths are that they are more prepared to take this next step than we were. The top players, that's really what we're talking about. They've had a host of international experience. A lot of them know each other from playing against one another, and whatever it is, under 17, under 18, under 20. So they have a deeper experience than we certainly had. The negative is they're all chasing the dream, and they're all thinking about the dream almost too hard. Like, we didn't chase the dream, Nick. We all believed it in our hearts, but we didn't chase it. We kept it quiet. There was no expectation that it would happen. As a matter of fact, I just had this conversation with this week. I was going to my first training camp, graduated from college, going to my first training camp, 21 years old. And the last thing I said to my dad was, what happens if I'm not good enough? After all of this, I'm not good enough, right? So we had that fear that and we always knew it. It was lurking, right? Could we measure up? Now the kids, there's more of an expectation that, I don't want to use the word entitlement. There's an expectation that they will measure up because they played all these international games and they've always held their own against their own age bracket. And what they're missing is that the very, very good players, our client, Leon Draisaitl, what's he going to play? Another 14 years, right? I mean, He's not going away. Connor McDavid, not going away. Austin Matthews, not going away. Mitch Marner, not leaving the game anytime soon. There are not, 620 roster spots, right, for 31 teams. It just isn't. There's a lot of those spots are already taken. And young players, And I think we knew this, Nick. We're pushing somebody out. Not easy, right? There's the guy you're pushing out, family, obligations, hang on to his career. It's a big hill. The last part of the hill is the toughest, and that's, I think, they don't have that. That's what we spend a lot of time talking to them about, and that's why I say that, they don't come to the game with that. What if I'm not good enough? And that's a healthy fear.
Yeah. Yeah, we did. I did, for sure. I constantly said to myself, when are they going to figure out I'm not that good?
Hey, Nick,
when
we thought
are they going to figure out and stop the
we
paychecks?
thought the same thing about you.
Now stop that. Stop that. Hey, I want to ask you about, your clients or just the field in general. What about their business savvy? Because we came from a generation before us, Mike, where they had no idea what their value was. And then when we went through the process, and thanks to Bob Goodnow, who came over after the Alan Eagleson, who kept it a secret from us, our true value, we discovered while we played a little bit more about our value. Do the kids know today, before they even start, that they could make hundreds of millions of dollars?
Well, I think that they do. I think that's part of the problem, is they're looking at the end result, and the end result is a paycheck, and that's not. You can't play this game for a paycheck. I mean, the money is certainly substantial and it's very important, but the reality is that you're playing this game to win the Stanley Cup. You're not playing it for that reason. You're not going to play very long, and you may not win it. Right? When we went through it, I went through it. You had the Montreal, the Islanders, Edmonton. And that was it, right? Calgary snuck in there for one, and there was, and that was, Pittsburgh for a couple. So the opportunity wasn't there, but you keep running your head into the wall trying to get there. The money, they do know their value. They don't always appreciate their value or their collective value. That the business is a business. It's a zero-sum game, and to a certain point, right? You're on the team. You're playing for that team. There's an ownership group, and they're running a business, and you're part of running that business. And players are their own small company, right? And the players today, many of them are relatively savvy about that, right? In terms of their own brand and trying to make themselves, presentable, saleable, attractive, and they have interests outside the game. That's a positive, right? That's an engaged athlete. Now, the trick there is, we always say your strengths are your weaknesses. So it's good to have that strength because you're engaged and aware, and it'll make you a better athlete. If you spend too much time on that, you're gonna neglect your day job. So we're constantly, that's a checkpoint for us, right? Like the rhythm of the season, and when they should be engaged with things, and when they should just be focused on hockey, and the summer is the summer.
Okay, so you're a top agent. You've got some of the best clients, top stars in the world, and you've already mentioned Draisaitl, who's nicely tucked away on a long-term deal in Edmonton, but some do not. You've got a top goal scorer in Mike Hoffman. He's coming off a terrific year and back-to-back years where you're a legitimate 30-goal scorer. But we've got this issue. It's a major issue. We haven't played in front of fans. There's no money. First of all, as an agent right now, Mike, how concerned are you about the business side of the game now?
Well, we're very concerned. Everybody in hockey everybody in the entertainment business must be concerned. Live entertainment must be concerned about what is going on. But beyond sports and our business, and in the US, we're missing that to a large degree. And you see it when you're watching US TV. I mean, we saw it in Detroit because the virus came from Europe through New York and into, the international travel. And Detroit has a major international hub between Europe and Asia, multiple nonstop flights daily. Our friends that were in the medical field, the trauma was overwhelming when the hospitals become overwhelmed. And they certainly were in Detroit, or approaching that. And they could see it coming, and they were preparing. But all their preparations, they were still, pushed to the limit. So it's serious. And in this country, 210,000 people have lost their life. And, and that's tragic. And you can rationalize it by, what other issues were going, that misses the point. So when you're up against that, and we don't have fans, we don't have a business. Very concerned. And how does that affect the economics? Well, I started off by saying, we don't know if we're going to have a season this year. So it affects it right to the nub. In dealing with a tub, we do. Mike Hoffman is, since he's been in the National Hockey League, he's consistently scored between 25 and 35, 36 goals. I guess this is a top. This year he's 29. He only played 62 games. Legitimate 30-goal scorer. Which team could use a 30-goal scorer who plays on the second line and plays the left side, left point on the power play, right? Somebody who takes nothing away from your top line. You can add this guy on your second line, and you can play on the power play on the point if you need that. And
there isn't a team out there that couldn't use him. But now it's at what price?
At what price? And that's Nick. Listen, these guys are making 1.5, a couple of them 2 times what I made in my entire career. That's life, right? That's life. There's no guarantees to this. It's, we're happy for them, and when you're confronted with this, you have to work your way through it, right? I mean, are the contracts that, the cap is still $81.5 million. The market hasn't changed. It's just which teams can afford the cap space, because they're always thinking the cap's going to go up a couple million, right? So they were thinking 83.5, maybe 84. The league said 84 at the low end, and then COVID hit. So most of the teams have lost their wiggle room. We have some ownership groups that are in the live entertainment business, restaurant business. So they're getting hit twice as hard. So we're expecting that this is a budget issue this summer, not a cap, as much as a cap issue. And you just have to deal with reality. You can't fight Mother Nature. And will it come back? Sure, it'll come back. But you've got to be smart about it and pragmatic. And then, term is term, right? Is it 1 year? Is it 2 years? Are you going to come out of this in 3 years? Is it going to take 5 years? It's these are decisions that are particularly difficult because we're not controlling anything. Normally, we control it. We're going to have a season. We know our player. We can judge where he's going to be and where he's going to come out of it. But right now we don't control anything. The virus controls everything.
Wow.
So everybody is feeling their way through this moment.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, because I got to think that, you've got a wide range of clients, and maybe tapering expectations might be a big challenge of yours, and I'm sure some of them get it, but some of them don't. And I know Torrey Krug is not a client of yours, and I understand when I hear him say that it's my time, and for unrestricted free agency, when it came to maybe people speculating whether or not he'd give Boston a hometown discount, and when I hear him say it's my time, I'm like, no, I think it's COVID's time now.
Well, yeah.
And
there's a price to pay. There's a price to pay, Nick. We tell them there's a price to pay. Everybody's paying it. Sadly, unfortunately, tragically, some people have paid it with their life. So perspective.
That's right.
And this is just business. There's lots of people out there that don't have. We're not whining. There's no crying on our end, and we get it. We get it. Short career. I totally understand. But this is where we find ourselves, and let's let's face it. We don't know what's going to happen. We hope for the best, and it's and it's going to take I don't know 2-3 years. They come through this. The airline industry. There's lots of question marks, and we're all proceeding, agents, players, owners, management, with the best of intentions and hopes, but this is clearly so far there's more of a need and more of an interest in clubs reducing their payroll than increasing their payroll, and we'll just have to wait and see how that shakes out. We will come through this. As a country, as North America, as the National Hockey League, we'll get through this. We always have. So where everybody is at that time, there'll be people who've made the right calls, and there will be teams or players that didn't. And it's there isn't anything more you can say about it than that, right? You can't try to figure out the answers. We don't know the answers, and we're not going to know the answers.
No, but what we can do? We can keep making calls and bugging people like you and trying to piece it all together, which I love doing this week, and getting a feel. And I talk to some, including general managers, and I say, "What's going on out there? What are you hearing?" And they're like, crickets. But you talk to others, and there's a lot of dialogue, Mike, and I'm sure you're hearing a lot of it, and mixed messages too, because we did see some trades, including your client, Matt Murray, and then we also saw Columbus signed Max Domi to a 2-year deal for 5.3. Some teams you feel like aren't in a hurry to get guys signed. Columbus did, albeit a short-term deal. So going into Friday as an agent and having a guy like Mike Hoffman, what are the expectations that he signs that day, or we just don't know?
You can't go into it with the same level of expectation as you would in other years, in a normal year.
So you might have to wait. You might have to.
Well, it's not even that you might have to wait. You might want to wait, right? Because you're looking at several options, and you want those options. You have to wait for that team to clear out some space. So think of it like this, Nick. In the stock market as an example, economy has a wrinkle, market crashes or goes down. A lot of people come on TV, and business people, savvy people, and they say there's always opportunity, right? There's a saying, don't never pass up the opportunity to take advantage of a good crisis, right? So there are teams that are going to do very well. They're going to make shrewd decisions, maybe quick decisions, calculated decisions, and there will be others that wait too long and they miss. And if you miss, the pieces are difficult to replace, right? So if you have an opportunity to slot somebody in, and they're a player that you could use and you could need, you have to make that decision. You have to take that risk. That's why that's the job. That's their responsibility to the club, and they're going to move, right? Good GMs will move, and they'll make that decision. They don't know if it's going to work out. They have a calculated probability that it should deliver X, Y, and Z, and that's all you can. That's all you can do. We're looking at it and saying, like this team, like the organization, the money can be a little bit light. Maybe the term is lower because things have changed. We're not going to, the trend had been signing these long-term deals and locking up these players, the good players for term through their 20s. And I think that you're going to start seeing some talented players say, okay, right now I'm in a position where, I don't want to say forced, but I'm going to a shorter term deal is more, is something I can wrap my head around. And they're going to put themselves in a position maybe to win. And at the end of that term, maybe they'll move to another team. So I think that this, and they'll, instead of doing one deal for 7 years, they might be 2 or 3 deals, right, from 28 forward. And, they might wind up playing on, a variety of teams that have a chance to win. I think that, the COVID, the pandemic is, as a disruptor, I think you might see players signing shorter term deals. That's certainly the early trend. And whether they stay with that team or whether they just get comfortable on these shorter terms, and, you see a lot more player movement over the next 8 years. And,
pros and cons of getting hurt, the risk of not
Yeah.
having the security that you probably would have liked. That's okay.
Right. Yeah, it's okay because you insure against the bad injuries. And, Nick, when we played, an ACL was potentially career ending.
I had
Now
it. Yep.
Yeah, now it's not even 6 months. So I shouldn't say it's not even. It's a long term, but it's recoverable.
Yes.
They don't do the damage anymore. They're, concussions. The league has done a very good job in addressing that, right? Not the issue it was 10 years ago. So yes, there, security is security. But there's nothing wrong. There's a lot of players that played, on a series of 1-year contracts and just let the rising, contract trend through the 90s take them, from, the not the minimum, but the average to doubled out. So there's lots of ways to play it. It does come down to the player, what he wants, what he can endure, right? How comfortable is he taking this approach? But the added part to your career is you're on a longer term deal, Nick. It's when things go south a little bit, or your team has some injury, it's easy you lose your edge, right? It's easy to lose your edge. Shorter term deals, you're always looking at that next contract, right? 2 or 3 year deals, but you get into year 1, you're like, okay, at the end of year 2, I could sign an extension.
Wow.
You're always, there's a motivator there, right? So these are young men, and they're, so I see yes, there's pros and cons in everything. That's why you take the information that you have at the time you have to make a decision, and you use your best judgment and then move forward.
Yeah. That's like dangling the carrot, Ludi. That's it. That's I'm sure general managers and coaches would love to see shorter term deals to keep you hungry for the next one. So
except when the player leaves as an unrestricted free agent, then they're not going to like it. And that's the risk. That's not the risk, but that's the balance that they have to make. Right.
And that's where Columbus is right now with Max Domi. 2 years, they can walk him right to unrestricted free agency. And that's exactly what you're talking about. Okay, Mike, a lot of Winnipeg Jet fans out there. Where is Patrick Laine going?
Well, not an easy contract to trade, not an easy player to trade because the return is difficult to match, to get the match back. What you're hoping for is the Jets have, quite unbelievable that, 2 years ago, arguably one of the deepest D-core in the league, and between free agency and just looking for more opportunity and a retirement out of the blue from Big Buff, they're shorthanded on the blue line. So, they have, Wheeler, Connor, Laine, Ehlers. They need a center if Brian Little is hurt, and they've lost a lot of defensemen. And when you're in that situation, you're trying to make your team more competitive. You've got big gaps. You've got to fill them. You don't fill them with draft picks. It seems, so I think it's if it happens, it's certainly lots of rumors out there, and player assignments, trades, that's part of the game. We know that, right? We accept that as players. So when you look at the history of the game, the greatest players have been traded. So it's a rarity that you have a
Yeah.
Steve Yzerman that finish and Lidstrom, those types of players. Um, you know, Patrick get traded. That's a function of maybe of COVID, maybe trying to reorganize their player salaries and filling a gap that they can't fill otherwise.
Yeah.
And on balance, they have to weigh it out and say it's it's a good move. Again, you take the information you have at the time you have to make a decision, and that's your job to make a decision. So player's job is to pick up and leave and make it where he's going. So we'll see where it shakes out.
No, for Winnipeg fans though, 2 years ago this was unimaginable moving Patrick Laine, but pandemic aside, Mike, with the salary cap world, 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2 here, and there's only so much of a pie to go around. Nobody saw that a couple of years ago.
No. Listen, we've got contracts, with players, and we all have players that have contracts or shorter or longer term. If we knew this was coming, we would have done something different. But nobody nobody expects this or to this degree. Now, it's certainly, when is it going to happen? Bill Gates was talking about pandemics in 2015, but it's not like it was imminent. It comes out of the blue like all the other ones, and it's not the first one that we've had, and there've been several since 1917. So it's not or 18. That's you can't prepare for that. That is truly the unforeseeable. You just make adjustments, and quite frankly, businesses that have adapted and adjusted, have found a way. Some of them have found a way. I mean, restaurants and live entertainment. There is no adjustment there, right? But we have to prepare for a season that's going to start in after the new year, according to the league. Hope they're right. We're counting on medicine and science to lead the way. I have confidence that they will, just because I've seen so many great things that in my lifetime that science has conquered. So we'll see where it plays out.
So Patrick Laine has 1 year left on his deal, but once he gets traded, he would be eligible for a long-term deal. Matt Murray is eligible right now. He's a restricted free agent, and Ottawa's going to have to find a way. They spent an asset on him, a second rounder. So, how easy is that? Have you had talks at all with Ottawa, and how important is it to you and Matt that Ottawa, and everybody's talking about Ottawa having the best week of their franchise's history in terms of adding real assets that can make a difference. But Mike, we all know there's been an ownership situation there where they haven't always spent a lot of money. So how concerning is that for Matt or for you?
Well, in terms of talking to Ottawa, Rob Hooper and Andy Scott are managing that file in terms of being a lead. They only rely on me when they need somebody to talk goalie talk to Matt, and they don't know that language.
So
I'm happy to do that. He's a great guy, and he's had great success. So in terms of Ottawa, what was interesting is Matt was actually quite positive about the move, and he sees their youth, and that's always a positive. And the NHL is so tight with 31, soon to be 32 teams. That spreads the talent around. Teams are not that far away, even when they think or seem like they're that far away. A couple players and things can change dramatically. So Matt has a great attitude about it, he's got an arbitration case coming up. It's either going to be that or the guys will figure out something longer than 1 year. But again, it's we're back to what I said before. Is it one and done? Is it a shorter term deal? Is it a longer term deal? This is something that they have to work out with Matt. 26 years old. There's not many goalies that are his age, right? We have a generation of goaltenders that are approaching retirement, right? That are 33 and older. In 3 years, that's a lots of good young players in the league, but unproven, and time will tell. But Matt is proven, and he's on the leading edge of that other generation at 26. And he's a valuable player, right? It's not many at 26 have 2 Stanley Cup rings, right? That's as somebody who didn't get one, win one, deserve one. I've always admired and applauded his maturity and really the way he handled himself through those 2 cup runs. So he'll be fine, and we're just sort of feeling we're like everybody else. I said, our guys, it's like you wake up in that hotel room and you've been on the road for 2 weeks, and the lights are off and you're trying to find your way to the bathroom. You don't know which way to turn, and you certainly can't find the light switch to turn the lights on. But eventually,
and that's if you're sober.
Yeah, we're always sober, Nick.
Oh yeah. Okay, here's one for an ex goalie. Okay, and you talked about it. How many mid-30 goalies are going to be out of the league in a couple of years? We saw that Askarov from Russia be the first pick in the draft, but there's not a lot of talk about these up-and-coming goalies. What the hell is going on here, Mike? Why can't we produce great goalies anymore at an early young age to come in and be stars at 23 or 24?
Well, Nick, it's true. Many of the top young goalies in the league, Vasilevsky, this young guy Sorokin is coming over, for his first year with the Islanders. Samsonov with
Washington,
Shesterkin, and our client Georgiev, and both Russian. Georgie's he's got a Bulgarian passport, but he played as junior and was signed out of Finland. But these are all European goalies, right? And we have that. So, my theory on this, Nick, is that we have lots of resources in North America. Lots of goalie coaching, and in my opinion, too much goalie coaching, right? Goaltender has to be able to read the play, understand where it's coming from, understand the options. Where's the puck going to go? What's going to happen after that? You have to see it in a blink, right? So, we do a lot of drills in coaching our goalies, but it's more of a dance. It's shuffle, butterfly, move to the other side. Where the play's going.
Muscle memory.
Yeah. Well, that's fine. And that's good. That's a piece of it. But you have to be able to do that in a game situation. You have to be able to do it reading the game. And, and I don't know if that's, where it falls off. But it should be a concern, right? Because we have a host of players. Our client, Ryan Miller, is 40, right? He can still play.
Hanging in there.
Right? So, that's the other end of it. But but he's still 40, and lots of guys. There are 5 or 6 guys, 35 and older. Another 4 or 5, 6, 33, 7 and older. Right. And it's an entire. They're all starters. All of them were starters. It's a generation of very good goaltending that's retiring. Right. On the doorstep of retirement, or in 3 years will be on the doorstep of retirement. So there's a lot of, and we've got good young players. Listen, Mackenzie Blackwood in New Jersey, and Carter Hart in Philly.
Yeah.
Our guy Jordan Binnington. He's going to be part of that leading edge, and he's won, right? So he's passed that test. Not that you have to win the Stanley Cup, but he came back this year. He's having a strong year. All these other kids this will be the year, right? If we have a year. So there are not question marks, but they still have to go out and do it. We have every expectation, and we need them to be able to do it, because even these guys, you need the next group, Cal Peterson and in Los Angeles, as an example. They have to step up, and there's a lot of I don't want to say there's question marks. We need to replace an entire generation of really first-rate goaltending, and there's great opportunity, but it's you don't learn playing goal at the NHL level overnight, right? You got to live through the battle scars, and we'll see. It'll be an interesting part of the league to watch develop over the next 3 years.
So you buy into that theory that goalies need 5-6 years to hit their mark? Markstrom in Vancouver would be a perfect example of that.
I had they'll come to it at different times. Everybody's a little bit different. They don't need it, but what I would consistently tell our clients is that, goaltending clients, is that I don't care how good you are at 25 or 26, you will be better at 29 and 30. And when you crest 30, the next group of good players coming up, they're taking a year or 2 or 3 to hit their mark. The league is mostly the league that and that's what, quite frankly, that was Red Berenson. I got traded to Hartford, and he came to a game in Detroit. He was coaching at Michigan. And, I talked to him after the game for a few minutes, and, I was rumored to be traded and was shortly thereafter. And, he wanted to know how long I intended to play. And, I gave him a flip comment, and he got mad. And we had a really serious conversation about, playing hockey into your 30s. It's a great time to play, because you are in control of the game. All the players in the league, and you've gone through the wars, and you've got the experience, and you don't walk away from the game. So, those are while they don't need it. Matt Murray stepped out of the American League. Marc-Andre Fleury got hurt. Matt won the Stanley Cup. Right now, win the Stanley Cup by yourself.
Once in a lifetime story.
Yeah, and he just happened to step in, and Sid was, all world, that playoff, the 2 cup wins. I mean, it was really amazing, but just willed their team to win. But Matt was there, and he was a rock, and so he had early success. He had a tougher year last year. Yeah, that's all part of it, right? I mean, you look at all the great players, they had those years, right? And they would, some of them won the Stanley Cup and didn't make the playoffs the next year, right? Same goalie, same team. That's the vagaries of a long career. Point is that they have to have the experience. They have to be handed the keys. They've got to have the responsibility of getting their team into the playoffs and so forth. And it's process, Nick. It's the process. And I can go back to a question they asked me about the kids today. Here's the one thing that's lost, right? It's hurry up. I want to get there. I want to be a star. It's the process. The process is what makes it all worthwhile, right? Fighting through the tough parts, adversity, those moments when you second guessed yourself, right? Those moments where you realize after a game, like, hey, I can play at this level. Right, I know what I'm doing, right, and that's all part of the process, and probably more so for goaltending than any other position. And it's getting the opportunity, it's establishing yourself and some trust in the coach. It's having some failure. It's recovering, and
it's a great feeling. It's a great feeling when you get there.
Nick, I tell guys all the time. I remember the game, all these years later, that it happened for me, right? And it was, we were playing in Winnipeg. They had Anders Hedberg and Ulf Nilsson and Bobby Hull, right? Which they had a great team. It was fast. They scored 2 goals in 3 minutes. Start the game. Quick math, I'm going to give up like 14 goals a period, right? I was in full.
You're looking at the coach? Mode. Did you look at the bench?
No, he'd already sent the goalie out, but the other goalie lost his mask. He couldn't find it. He was like, my mask. He didn't want any part of that game, right? And we win the game 3-2.
You shut the door,
Okay.
Ludi.
Well, you walk out of the game and you go, okay, if I can get through that, I can, I can play here, right? And that's where it was. You have that moment that the aha moment. Aha, okay, all right, now I know. Now I know I can play here, right? And that's the process. I don't know when it happens. You just have to believe it's going to happen, and you keep slugging away until it does happen. Right? It happens sooner than later, for guys. And, for me, it happened my first year, but I was drowning. I got off to obviously a good start. I made the team, it's WHA. And first game is against Gordie Howe. I watched him for, I don't know, the first 10 minutes of the game. I forgot I was supposed to stop.
Autograph?
Yeah. Can I have your autograph, sir? Right. So, I had knee injury. I had a bunch of floating cartilage. I was out for 6 weeks and probably, kept me there. Right. Or they might have sent me down, or I don't know. And I came back and, it just worked out. Right. And that's part of the process. You can't predict it. You just stay with it.
Mike Liut joining me here, and agent extraordinaire. Now, Mike, you think you got competitive guys with clients like Draisaitl and Patrick Laine and Mike Hoffman? Let me ask you something. Would any of them run their goalie in practice?
I don't think any of them none of them get that lost on the ice. They run into the goalie.
Yes. Full disclosure. It's not because I'm competitive. It's because I skated.
You just got lost.
With my head down.
Into me. But,
I ran you so hard in practice.
That would have been at least a 4-game suspension in today's game. And it was practice.
What was that tree trunk of a stick that you used to use? Was that a Louisville? What was that?
I think it was a Louisville at that time, but that's only because we lost our stick supplier, Northland. That was the stick back in the day. But
two-hander. You gave me a two-hander.
Well, sometimes the guy's going to run you over. If you take it, then you're going to take it all year. So you gotta do something, right?
But the real competitive.
That should have been on camera, Nick, when you ran into me. That was Dale Hunter trying to make you a scoring winger.
Yes, he says go to the goalpost. I'm like,
yeah.
I went to the wrong goalpost.
Wrong goalpost.
Oh, you meant the near goalpost. I was cutting across to the far goalpost.
We can laugh about it now, Nick. It wasn't that funny when it happened.
No. You were the veteran and former all-star and all be all NHL goalie. I was always the slug. You were a star once upon a time. Yeah. That's why I got the two-hander.
I think the only thing that saved you was Huntz was laughing that hard that everybody started laughing. Then they thought it was planned.
Yeah. And then there was also, our famous crib games on flights.
That was probably the most competitive.
You punched
physical. Me. Well, it was physical, Nick.
You punched me.
Well, the guy gets a good hand. You got to intimidate him, right? We're hockey players. We're trying to put our will on top of intimidate, right? It's a game of intimidation. Doesn't matter if it's hockey or if it's cribbage.
And then the other time you got mad at me was, and I'm kind of looking around. I've got 3 conversations going at the same time, and then all of a sudden I get this slap right across my face, and it's like, cover your cards, Justin. And I'm like, who's Justin? He goes, and then Mike looks at me and goes, my 8-year-old.
Oh, that's right. You're trying to play gin with the big guys, and you're showing us your cards. You can't do that.
That's my problem.
What veterans are supposed to do. They're trying. The veterans are there to help the young guys. I was just trying to help get you focused.
That's why I'll never be a good agent, because I show my cards.
You show your cards.
Mike Liut, managing director of Octagon Hockey. Hey, listen, I know it's a busy week for you. Thank you so much for spending time with us here. Linemovement.com, Real Kyper at noon. Good luck Friday with unrestricted free agency, and good luck in the offseason. I usually say during the summer, but we know what that means now when it comes to offseason.
Right. Well, always fun to be with you, Nick, and you're always an entertaining guy in the locker room. So
All right.
glad to see you doing well.
Mike
Good to
Liut,
talk to you.
everybody. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah.
All right, a terrific conversation with the managing director of Octagon Hockey, Mike Liut, and a former teammate. Yeah, I think you got that picture when I talked about accidentally running him in practice. And boy, did I pay the price for that. But a shout out to all the agents going into unrestricted free agency on Friday. Man, do they work hard. Do they earn their money when it comes to taking care of their clients. So good luck to Mike Liut, Octagon Hockey, and all the rest of the agents going into unrestricted free agency. Thanks for joining me.